On the next Health Matters. Right now, thousands of people are waiting for organ transplants.
Living a life of survival instead of living life.
You'll meet a man who has a new heart and a new lease on life, and the two friends who hope to inspire others.
I was in the right place at the right time with the right part.
What it means to be a living donor and the difference that you can make after you die. The gift of life, organ donations and transplants. Right now on Health Matters.
Health Matters is made possible with the support of WSU Health Sciences Spokane, WSU College of Medicine, and by Providence Healthcare.
With every twist and shout and every mended heart, we see you. You who trusts us to take care. Providence, health for all, care for you.
Welcome to Health Matters. I'm Teresa Lukens. Thanks to advances in medicine, people who receive organ transplants are living longer, more active lives. Unfortunately, over 20 people die every day in the U.S. waiting for available organs. To begin our conversation about organ transplants and donations, I'd like to introduce you to a Spokane man who considers himself one of the lucky ones. Brian Starr was healthy and active until something happened to him that can happen to any of us.
In 2013, I got a virus in my heart, and my immune system attacked my heart and did quite a bit of damage in the process.
At age 50, Brian Starr had to stop living his active life and start managing it.
It was living a life of survival instead of living life enjoying it.
Over the next 6 years, as his condition worsened, the struggle increased.
My day became get up in the morning, get some breakfast, go back to bed for an hour, get up, take a shower, get ready to go to work, go back to bed for an hour, and then get up, finish getting dressed, go to work for a couple hours, come home, sleep for 3 or 4 hours.
It reached a point last May when Brian was approved for a heart transplant and placed on the recipient list. He and his wife had known for several years that this was where they'd end up.
But, I would say that I was at peace with whatever the process was, just knowing that things were going to work out, that what was going to happen was meant to be.
After a relatively short 4-week wait, his surgeon came into his hospital room with the news that they'd found him a heart.
It was very exhilarating, pretty emotional.
Just 24 hours later, he was on the operating table. Equally fast was his post-recovery. He was home within 9 days.
I think the fastest time they told us that anybody had ever made it out of the hospital was 8 days.
As he continued his recovery at home, there was one change he noticed immediately.
I could hear my heart for the first time. My old heart had gotten quite quiet because of its pumping function. And so with the new heart, it was kind of like dating at first. It was trying to get to know me, and I was trying to get to know it.
As his stamina gradually returned, Brian was able to exercise regularly, increase his hours at work, and do so many of the normal things he had not done for years.
Sometimes I feel like a 20-year-old. But it's hard to do that when you're in a 56-year-old body.
And every day, he finds himself feeling thankful for the heart donation that gave him back his life.
It's a huge gift that is definitely going to be taken very well care of, but also I'm going to live life, and we're going to go have some fun.
And joining me now is Dr. Christy Smith with Providence Northwest Heart and Lung. She's the surgical director for heart failure surgery, including mechanical heart support, cardiac transplantation, and emergent resuscitation. Also here is Chrissy Schmidt, a hospital development program manager for Lifecenter Northwest. She's responsible for planning, implementing, and managing customized organ and tissue donation programs for hospitals. And ladies, thank you so much for being here to have this important discussion. Dr. Smith, talk a little bit more about Brian Starr's case, because there's a couple of things that happened with him, and we mentioned it to begin with, that could happen to anyone. He got a virus in his heart. How common is that?
So it actually is frighteningly more common than we'd all like to think. It doesn't happen to everyone, and obviously if you look at the number of viruses and the number of people that get the flu and other things, it's not that common, but we do find that patients who start to suffer from heart failure symptoms when they've gotten that virus, and it usually happens around 6 months after they've had their virus. They've started to recover, they start feeling better, but not quite better. You see that happen in otherwise young, healthy, generally patients in their 30s to 50s who come in and suddenly have got a heart function that went from 65%, which is considered normal, to 15 or 20%.
I think, too, it's exciting since the first heart transplant was done at Providence 30 years ago. This is the anniversary of the first one.
It is.
How far we've come.
It's amazing. When you look at transplant medicine in general, I mean, just cardiac surgery in general, we started doing the first heart-lung machines and just the first initial foray into heart surgery in the early 60s, really in the 70s is when that started to take off, and that's really when you start seeing heart transplantation start to take off. And when we started with Christian Bernard, and he was in South Africa. He had nothing, no immunosuppression medications, the drugs that help you not to reject the heart. Then we went to steroids, and that was the only thing we had, and people did okay, but they tended not to live very long. Now with modern medicine and the medications that we have and the new testing we have to make sure that you have a good match with your heart, we actually have patients who are able to live with their transplanted hearts for decades. And that's a huge leaps and bounds from where we were even 10 years ago.
Chrissy, talk about what Lifecenter Northwest does and works with doctors like Dr. Smith to help this process.
Sure. Lifecenter is dedicated to saving and improving lives through organ and tissue donation. So we are the federally designated organ procurement organization for Washington, North Idaho, Montana, and Alaska. So we work closely with our hospital partners to identify patients who may be suitable for donation and then support the families through the process.
So what do you want everyone to know about the process and about organ and tissue donation?
You know, organ and tissue donation is the greatest gift that someone can give to others. I think what's most surprising to people is that donation is so extremely rare. Less than 1% of people who die are suitable for organ donation, and only half of those go on to donate. So it's a very, very rare opportunity. But that's why we encourage people to educate themselves about donation. They can do that through our website, through the Donate Life website as well, and make an informed decision and make sure that you're registering yourself, and really, even more importantly, making sure that your family knows what your wishes are as well.
Is it as easy as making sure you're designated on your driver's license, or do we need to go beyond that?
There are many different ways you can register. So going to the DMV and registering there is a very common way because it's the easiest way and it's where we catch most people. But now, because of the internet, because of our iPhones, you can register, through the health app on your iPhone. You can go online, again, through our website and register that way as well. So many different opportunities to register.
Dr. Smith, what are some of the challenges you face? Chrissy mentioned that not every heart is viable, that it's difficult to find hearts that will match patients. What are some of the other challenges that you face?
Well, especially with heart transplantation, we're actually pretty limited. So one of the miracles is that one donor can save 25 different people with different kinds of organ donations and different things that they donate. But with the heart, it's probably the most sensitive of all the organs. So we have 4 hours to be able to get the heart from the donor and have it functional in our recipients. And so that time restriction really makes it tough to be able to make sure that we have a well-organized machine and we have a plan to go get the organ, bring it back, and get it into our recipient in a timely fashion. So I think it's probably one of the biggest challenges that not everybody knows about.
Right, time and distance.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Is it like we see in the movies and on TV? It's in a small cooler and whisked onto an airplane or a helicopter?
We've got a Yeti cooler. It's awesome. But it really is. It's some of the stuff hasn't changed, and that has been kind of common to transplant from the beginning, where we take the organ, we're able to bring it back, we put it and we pack it into some ice and some icy water, and it's in a cooler, and we take the cooler and we go over to the airplane and we get on and come back home, and then we're able to go right into the OR. And thankfully, because I have some great partners who also help with that, it's a big team, and we all get everything ready so that we can come in and put the heart right in and just watch it magically start.
On any given day at Providence, how many people do you have waiting for a heart?
It depends on whether they're actively waiting or not actively waiting. Our list can be anywhere from 15 to 40. We usually generally have between 30 to 35 people who are waiting on the list, but not everybody has to wait in the hospital. That's the nice thing, is we're able to stabilize most of our patients and allow them to be home waiting with their loved ones. They just have to stay within a certain radius of the hospital, because when we get that call, when it's time to go, it's time to go.
And Chrissy, you're working with those families or those patients and making sure that that process goes smoothly. Is that part of what Lifecenter does?
That's a really big part of what we do. Really, our families and our donors are at the heart of everything we do. So as soon as we identify a patient who then becomes a donor, we send a team on site who supports that family while we are evaluating, monitoring, taking care of that donor, finding matches for the donor's gifts, and then eventually going to the OR. So we continue to support that family for a minimum of 18 months through our aftercare program as well. So we offer bereavement support materials. We also facilitate a letter writing program where we work with our transplant centers. So if the donor families and the recipients would like to write to one another, those go through us eventually. We also have donor celebrations once a year too, where we invite hospital partners and transplant partners and donor families and recipients and the donation agencies around our area here too, where we all come together and celebrate the gift of life. So really anything we can do to continue to honor and celebrate those donors and the families.
People have a lot of misconceptions about being an organ donor. Some families think they're going to be charged for it. There's just a lot of things surrounding the topic that may put fear in people that would prevent them from becoming a donor.
Yeah, we work with families a lot that have a lot of questions, and again, there are a lot of misconceptions out there. A family is never charged for any costs that are incurred during the donation process. Also, there's also that misconception out there that if someone from the healthcare team knows you're an organ donor, they see that red heart on your license, they're not going to do everything they can to save your life. That one's been out there for years, and we all know that's not true. You know, when you are admitted to a hospital, that healthcare team, their sole focus is to save your life. Donation is only possible when all those life-saving measures are exhausted, that we come into the picture.
So it really does help to educate yourself if you're interested and you're watching, to learn more about it and put aside some of those misconceptions.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like Dr. Smith said earlier too, what's so remarkable about donation is that one organ donor can save up to eight lives through the recovery of their heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, pancreas, and intestines. And one tissue donor can, we call it improve or enhance, on average about 125 lives, if not more, through many different allografts that we recover. So that includes bone, skin, soft tissue, cartilage, ligaments, tendons, veins, arteries, and heart valves. So pretty remarkable what one donor can do for others.
And then they're living longer. Their quality of life is better, and it's all thanks to the newer drugs.
It is. It's thanks to the newer drugs, and that it's also thanks to some of the new devices and the kind of mechanical support things that we have to help keep our recipients healthier so that they can live longer while they're waiting for that organ. Because as much as we try, you can still wait anywhere from 6 months to 5 years, depending on your size and your blood type. So we want to keep the recipients as healthy as we can so that they can enjoy that gift of transplant much longer, because the healthier they are when they receive the gift, as healthy as you can be with heart failure, the longer they're going to live and the more they can enjoy that.
And what would you like to say as we get close to wrapping up about being an organ donor to people who may have some fears about it?
I think being an organ donor comes with a lot of mystery, and it comes with a lot of a little bit of fear, but it is the most amazing gift. And to watch the recipients when they're able to be with their families, they're able to go back and be with their loved ones. Our latest transplant recipient told me, he looked at me and said, I had checked travel with my wife off the list. I thought I'd never get to take her anywhere again. And this gift allows him to be able to go out and travel with her once again. It's the little things that make you remember that it's living life so that you can have a useful life. And being a donor is the only way that that gift happens.
All right. Well, thank you both for being here. And if you are interested in learning more about the Providence Heart and Lung Program or how to become a donor, you'll find those important links on the Health Matters page at ksps.org. The increasing rate of diabetes and high blood pressure in the general population are two reasons that kidney transplants are among the most common organ transplants. Andy Croyce never imagined that he would need a new kidney until his health started to fail and he went on dialysis. What happened next was amazing, even to his doctors.
Usually you look at your siblings, brothers, sisters, anybody in your family is usually the best match.
In the search for a kidney donor, Andy Croyce's sister and 2 children were tested, but so were a number of friends like Eric Johnston, who hadn't known Andy all that long.
Hired me to build his home just on their family farm down the street from their home.
In the process of building that home, they became friends.
And as that process happened, hearing that Andy needed a kidney and seeing that the process was needing to go maybe a little faster, I decided to go ahead and volunteer to go have my blood tested to see if I was a possible donor.
Not only was Eric a possible donor, he was the best possible donor.
They couldn't believe that a person that was not a relative that would match better than my son or my daughters.
They call it a super match.
We were a perfect match of 6 criteria, 6 out of 6.
At that point, Eric knew he would be donating his kidney.
My stepdad, actually, he taught me that if you can do something to better someone else's life and it's in your power to do it, then you need to do it.
In the time leading up to the donation, Eric says the counseling and support he received took away any anxiety that he may have had.
It begins to settle you down and calm you so that you become more sure of the decision that you want to make to help someone.
As amazed as doctors were that a non-relative could be a super match, what happened during the transplant amazed the surgeon even more.
I was just waking up and he had to tell me that whole story.
When they hooked the kidney up to Andy before they actually placed it inside of his abdomen, that the kidney started functioning.
Normally, I don't think you get to visit too much with a surgeon, but he was like beside himself.
I started crying because it was so, meant a lot to me that it was going to work. It was the beginning of our success story.
2 years after the transplant, Andy and Eric both say they're in great health.
I couldn't tell you I don't have 2 kidneys. I have 0 side effects, 0 fatigue.
These 2 men now share a bond that their families will share for generations.
When I was given a kidney to his wife and to his children and to his grandchildren and to his great-grandchildren.
I don't have the words to describe the way I feel, but Eric knows.
And here to tell us more is Dr. Juan Mejia, Program Director for the Living Kidney Donor Program at Providence Sacred Heart Medical Center. He created and developed the Providence Liver and Pancreas Surgery Center. And Dr. Ellen Klohe, the Laboratory Director at Vitalant Laboratories. The Vitalant Lab supports practitioners who specialize in transfusion, transplantation, and regenerative medicine. And thank you both so much for being here to talk more about this important topic. Dr. Mejia, the story that we just saw with Eric and Andy, important for a couple of reasons. One of them being that living donors are actually the optimal donor. Why is that?
We know that living donors have the graft or the kidney has a longer, it lasts longer than deceased donor kidneys. One of the reasons it's likely donors tend to be healthier. In order to donate a kidney, you need to be quite healthy. There's also less downtime from the time the kidney is procured to the time the kidney is actually transplanted. Most of these living donors, the patients are right next to each other, so basically the kidney comes out and then the recipient is ready to have the kidney transplanted.
Mm-hmm. So there's not that time and distance issue that can happen with other transplants.
With, for example, a deceased donor where a kidney may be coming from, 6, 12 hours away. Yeah.
And with a kidney, when patients are to the point where they're on dialysis and are put on the transplant list, having a transplant is actually the first course of treatment, unlike some conditions. Is that correct?
So when a patient is it's being diagnosed with renal failure, and there's a certain cutoff criteria, that patient can be listed for transplant. And patients can be on dialysis for many years. Now, the only cure, if you would, for end-stage renal disease or renal failure is a transplant. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, we don't have, organs to go around to transplant everybody who's on dialysis. So there's a gap between the patients listed for transplant and the amount of transplants that we do per year.
And Dr. Klohe, I think when most people think Vitalant, they think about blood donation. So even I was surprised to know that there was a lab in Spokane that does this special testing. Talk about the work you do.
Sure. Our lab is the HLA Laboratory, and that stands for Human Leukocyte Antigen Associated antigens, and those are proteins that are present on the cells of all the tissues and organs in the body. And they're inherited characteristics, just like blood types, but there's many, many more variations. And it's that HLA type of the donor and the recipient that need to be compatible.
So I think so many people think, oh, it's just a blood test, and it's something like you see on television or in the movies, and they're compatible and they do a transplant. It goes way beyond that.
It does, and so we monitor patients who are waiting for a transplant to determine whether or not they have developed any immunity against the HLA type of other individuals. There are tens of thousands of different HLA types in the population, and so it's uncommon for a donor and a recipient to be a perfect match. And so what we need to do in our laboratory is to determine whether those mismatches are going to be of any clinical significance, because the body will recognize those mismatches as a potential foreign invader and potentially mount an immune response against the organ. And so that's why people are placed on immunosuppression to dampen that immune response. But the best possible transplant is one in which the recipient doesn't have any pre-existing immunity to the donor's HLA type.
Mm-hmm. Which was in the case of the story we saw, and they were not related. Do you often see people who are not related by blood have a match in the way those two did?
Most donor-recipient pairs are not HLA identical, and so most do have mismatches. And there are some patients that have immunity to lots of different HLA antigens, and it's very, very difficult to find a compatible donor for them. In this case, the patient and the donor happened to be compatible, which was a great thing for them.
Mm-hmm. And then testing continues?
Yes, testing continues. Once the transplant takes place, we want to make sure that even in spite of immunosuppression, the patient doesn't develop an immune response to the donor. And so we test for that immunity after transplant so it can be caught early and treated quickly.
Mm-hmm. For living donors, Dr. Mjia, I think it's a little scary for people. They're giving up an organ, but really they can live very full lives with just, say, the one kidney.
Right, that's correct. So I think that it starts out that to be able to donate a kidney, you need to be fairly healthy. So when you look at the patient population who donates kidneys, overall, their life expectancy it's greater or equal to the general population at the minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What's being done? I know there's technology is certainly helping in that process of donation. In fact, creating apps and different technology that will help connect people Talk a little bit about that.
One of those apps that we're excited about it's called Breeze, and that is it's a website where patients who may be interested in knowing if they could be potential living donors, they can go, and it takes you through a series of questions, sort of a preliminary screen, that if everything looks right, then that will connect you with the transplant center to for more in-depth testing. Yeah.
And do you anticipate that'll help the process?
I think that certainly would help the process, streamline it. We always have patients that are interested, but they don't know where to start or how to reach us. So.
And Dr. Klohe, new technology is helping in your field as well?
Yeah, it is. We use all the latest molecular techniques. We use the polymerase chain reaction to do the HLA typing, and we use flow cytometry to do the HLA antibody testing and cross-matching. So it's a highly technical field.
It must be very exciting for you to find those matches in what you do. Is that safe to say?
Yes, it is. We never, in the lab, we never get to meet the patients, but we feel like we know them because we see their blood samples, routinely, and, patients may not know it, but we're rooting for them to find a donor.
And what would you like people to know about being a donor?
I'm sorry, let's see.
As far as, encouraging people, would you like to see more people become donors?
Sure, of course, because as Dr. Mjia said, there's a gap between the number of people who are waiting for an organ and the number of donors that are available.
And there can be some stumbling blocks too. Just because you choose to be a donor doesn't mean that you can be, or that your organs would be accepted.
Right. It's a process where the transplant center, the different specialists that work within the transplant center, you'll have to meet all of them, and so you see a surgeon, you see in this case a transplant nephrologist, you meet with staff like Dr. Klohe, pharmacists, so it's and after that we all get together, and there's a committee, and we make decisions as a group to see not only who can be listed for a potential kidney transplant, but also who could be a potential candidate for donating a kidney. So I think that to summarize it, you need to be quite healthy, and the anatomy of the kidney needs to be ideal.
And thank you both for being here tonight. For more information on transplants or becoming a donor, go to the Health Matters page at ksps.org. And be sure to join us next month for a look at how good dental habits and modern dentistry can have an impact on your overall health. Health Matters, keeping that healthy smile, February 20th at 7 p.m. Until then, I'm Teresa Lukens. Good night.
Health Matters is made possible with the support of WSU Health Sciences Spokane, WSU College of Medicine, and by Providence Healthcare.
With every twist and shout and uphill battle, we see you who trusts us to take care. Providence, health for all, care for you.